Welcome to The View on Data, a monthly roundtable podcast where women in data share unfiltered stories, career lessons, and real talk about what it takes to thrive in the world of data and tech.
Welcome back, folks, to The View on Data. Just to recap what this show's entire purpose is, it's generally just to create a space for really honest, vulnerable talk about what it's like to build a career in data and just being like very upfront. There are the highs, the lows, everything in between. And today we're going to be talking about data and the art of balance, going back into a bit of the lows, some of the burnout pieces, and how we manage the mental load of work, life, and learning without, ideally, burning out. And so just to recap who all these lovely folks are, let's start off with Faith.
Hi, everybody. I'm Faith McKenna, lead technical instructor at DBT. Happy to be here.
Next, hi, everyone. I'm Paige Berry. I am a lead data analyst on the internal data team at DBT Labs.
Yay, and I'm Jerrie Kenny. I'm a senior resident architect here at DBT.
And I am Eric Louie, or most folks call me Rick, and I am a manager for our data analytics team and our data enablement team. And I am very stoked to talk about this topic because it's something that is near and dear to my heart because I'm sure as many of other folks feel it, burnout is something that I think that we've all gone through before. And if you haven't, then honestly, let's have you on the pod. But
seriously, what's your secret?
So let's kind of kick it off with what does balance look like for all of us here right now, if it even exists. So let's kick it off with Jerrie.
Such a hard question. What does balance look like? For context, I'm a mom of 3 young kids, and there is no such thing as balance. Is because what it looks like is trying to be in the moment when I can be for the different things that are on my list. So when it's work, I try to be as fully present as I can be during those windows of time, but it means having hard boundaries on start and finish, which is hard sometimes when you're digging into problems. There are definitely quite a few late nights here and there, but for the most part, it's like having to define that because you have to do pickup, you have to do drop off. And then when I'm with family, trying to have be present even when I'm tired during those windows of time. And I say it's hard because that means me, the Jerrie, wanting to dig into learning new things, trying new hobbies is the hardest part is fitting that in this new world. I know it will evolve, but right now balance is like always shifting based on need. Like what's top need right now in this moment.
Totally, which I'm sure takes a lot of mental energy to figure out day to day.
Yes.
Yeah. Faith, what about you?
Yeah, I think I feel like this becomes sort of seasonal for me, especially working at DBT. We just came out of hosting Coalesce, which went so well. There was so much that was really fun about it. And also the run up to Coalesce meant there was pretty much no work-life balance. And that's okay with me at this stage in my career. And now that we're out of Coalesce, I am starting to re-implement some of those similar boundaries that Jerrie talked about. Things like, okay, I'm not actually going to start my workday until 9. And if there's if I feel a little bit ready before 9, then I'm going to do a little bit of meal prep and just sort of kill time on tasks that are helpful to my overall well-being. Because I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. DBT is such an interesting job that it can be difficult for me personally to turn it off. And so I think it takes very intentional, specific tasks to practice turning it off. So coalesce season, I don't know that I really am capable of finding balance. But afterwards, being able to define start and end times, like Jerrie said, and really holding myself to those things helps a lot. Paige, what about you?
Yeah, I like the idea of that, the defined start and end times. I think for me, I don't have those necessarily. I, I live at home with my husband and 3 cats, and so we don't have kids. So that does mean that there isn't a lot of like external things that are going to kind of be a boundary for me in terms of timing. Like Jerrie, you were talking about with drop off and stuff, pick up and drop off, and so I think about it almost more about like, what things am I going to accomplish or do for me and for the family, and make sure that those, I'm going to commit to those and get those, do those things. And then I can also do work, like trying to figure out that way. And so some of those are like specific things that I do every morning with Jay, my husband, or things that I do at certain like times for the cats. But it's and then for me, I'm in there somewhere, right? But it's really more like, okay, I'm going to commit to like doing these things, and if I've done those things, I have done what feels like at least the minimum for myself and the family, and then I can then it's like, all right, then I can do work.
Yeah.
Gosh, I feel like Jerrie, hearing you balance 3 kids and then also work, it's like I did 1 week of watching my nephew and while trying to work, and I was like, I can't do this. It's too much.
Real. It's real.
Real. For me, like, balance is something that like I didn't realize was so important until I was at like this emotional breaking point of like, this is like, I can't do this. And so for me, it's like really checking in with myself. And when I'm starting to feel like anxious, knowing where my anxiety shows up, and reflecting back of like mental health routines. And so is it that like every Sunday I like plan my week and I like reset, and during the weekdays I have to have a cutoff point of work where I live with my partner, and my partner and I are both really intense workaholics. We don't have kids. We have 2 cats. And it's been like, I know for me, if I work past 7, I'm not going to feel good. And there are like some trade-offs of like, okay, am I not balancing because of work, or am I not balancing because of me? And like, those are 2 for me distinct things. And so just always just trying to keep in check of like how much time is going towards work versus how much time is actually going towards my life and my interests. And what is that ratio, and is that sustainable? But working in data, sometimes I like to say like working in data can be like a thankless job at some point.
For sure.
For sure.
Yes.
Like, it's unpredictable. Yeah, they're like high stakes sometimes. It can be really mentally taxing. And so you have context switching, this always on culture with Slack, with dashboards, board reporting. And there's like this hidden emotional labor, I would also say, that comes with trying to explain data, trying to justify this, and constantly trying to defend the reasons why certain things take time or the quality behind it. And so what has been like the biggest struggle in finding balance as a data practitioner? And have you ever recognized, signs of burnout when it's a little bit too late?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
It's so real. I think I have definitely struggled with this one, where we're problem solvers, right?
Yeah.
And I found that, so a flag for me is when I start dreaming about the problems I'm trying to solve, which happens a lot, I know that I need some time away. I need
That's
to
real.
reset. That means I'm not able to switch off. Even if I am not working, I am constantly thinking, how should I be solving it? And I'm like, thinking of different ways. And it's good and bad, right? The good is like, it allows you, sometimes you have ideas in the most random moments of your day. Those are the good moments. But the reality is you're not switching off. And so, for example, the truth, last night I dreamt about a problem I'm trying to solve. And I was like, Jerrie, that means you're not switching off. It means maybe I need to take more walks. I need to like figure out how to um, compartmentalize that problem in a way where I'm like, I can't fix all the data problems I'm trying to solve. You know, they ask you a question, if you find it interesting or it's extremely challenging, but there are time restraints, there are all these things that all of a sudden have you spiraling. That's when I know that if I feel like I don't have a good handle on how what my game plan is, it stays, it lingers. So my new approach is if I find that my struggle is I don't have a handle on it, I need to write it down. I need to like piece of paper, write it down, 5 minutes, right? And then you choose one thing that you will think about that, be it the next morning or whenever you have the window of time. And that has helped me a lot because it's the unload. It's like get it out of your brain, and it doesn't have to be detailed. It's literally, this is a problem. And then all I'm going to do is game plan tomorrow. So that I'm not game planning at night. I'm not game planning when I'm sitting watching TV. I'm just like, I'm going to, sometimes it's timeline. I'm like, this is how I'll communicate timeline. So it's a very, very real one. And I think it's because for me, I'm always looking to solve, and I have to pace myself big time. And that's like the biggest flag is especially for me, is if I'm dreaming about it, then I know I'm taking it too far. Yeah.
So good. I like that second brain approach. Where do you put that? Like if you're like, oh, I'm perseverating on this problem too much and I need to write it down, like where does that go?
I have a lot of notebooks on my desk because I'm tactile. There's like a connection for me where if I write it down, it's also a release. Sometimes you can't write it down and you maybe have a notes and you can type it really quickly if it's easier. And now with things like ChatGPT, which I've just been testing it out, I narrate. I'm like, this is what's on my mind.
That's the good stuff.
Because then you truly stick to that 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You told yourself, right? And that helps.
I need to try that. That sounds really cool. Yeah. I have a notebook on my desk, so that works really well for things where I'm sitting. But then often I'll have those thoughts somewhere else, and so I'll do notes on my phone. Or I have this weird thing where I have this Slack account that is just mine. It's just my personal Slack account, but that means I can kind of connect to it from any computer I'm on, and that's where I will do a lot of my notes to myself, and then I can transfer that around when I'm back, like at work Slack. I'm also happy to like talk about. I think for me, I recognize signs of burnout when I don't feel like joy in anything outside of work because I'm like too anxious or sort of obsessing about things happening at work. That's usually a sign. And another one that I've noticed about myself is when I start working a lot of extra hours because I feel like I don't know when I've done enough in a day. And that's usually like a really bad sign that I'm like trying to do too many things, or I haven't figured out what the priorities really are, or I'm feeling anxious about something around like what I am and I'm not able to accomplish, or just like those kinds of feelings where I'm like, okay, I need to stop spiraling and write down. And a lot of times it is just like writing down somewhere and getting it all out and then being able to look at it and saying like, actually, this is like a cluster of stuff. And if I cluster this together, I see that this is an order of operations where I could solve it, or I could see that this is actually the most important thing in this cluster and the rest isn't that important. Those kinds of things start to actually really help. And honestly, one of the big ones for limit setting for me is not having work Slack on my phone.
Girl.
Oh my God. I know. Yeah. Yes.
Paige, I'm smiling because I see your analyst brain at work with your like managing the extra information. You're like, I gotta write this all down. And then clusters are emerging and I can do the order of operations. I was like, dang, not that analyst brain helping you solve this. Like that rocks.
That's amazing. A blessing and a curse. Yeah.
Yeah, Yuri, I definitely resonate with your feeling about like dreaming about problems, meaning you're going a little too hard in the paint. I think like for me, I notice it when I feel like my weekends are going way too quickly.
Mm.
Um, and this truly isn't all the time, but even this past weekend, just, if we're being real, that's how I felt. Like we got to the end of Saturday and I was like, oh, wait, oh my God, no, I have to go to work in 2 days again. Oh God. And it's just like the time was passing so quickly and we weren't, like my husband and I were not even that busy with plans. It just like
Mm-hmm.
flew by. So, it's a good thing your girl has a vacation coming up in a couple weeks because like the feeling that way and then getting to Monday morning and being like, okay, we can do it. We can do it. Like when you have to psych yourself up a lot, is not a great feeling, especially when you enjoy the work that you do. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Sundays, Gary's.
I feel like there's like a lot of common themes here around like, hey, being like present around like enjoyment. Like, are you enjoying your time out of work? And then also like some of the solutioning around like just writing this thing down, just write it down and
Mm-hmm.
just like put all of your thoughts on a piece of paper. Um, for me, I have learned over the course of my life that I compartmentalize stress subconsciously to a point where like I don't realize it until like I'm kind of like panicking. I get panic attack.
yeah.
Um, but for me, it's like I always know when I'm feeling burnt out when I like sleep a lot. Like I sleep a lot as it is, but when I'm oversleeping past alarms, that's when I know when it's like, okay, you kind of hit this breaking point. And I've seen this thing where it's like this doctor on YouTube said that like burnout often happens when you are putting in a lot of work towards something, but you're not feeling any reward from it. And so I think a lot back of like, okay, what have I been doing in the past few days that have felt like there's a tangible thing that I feel like really good about, that we're working towards something. Um, and also I'm like, I have to check of like, have I taken a vacation? Have I taken a day off?
Yeah.
And more recently, like this past week, I'm like, I'm feeling a little burnt out. And I was like, oh, I haven't taken a vacation in 5 months, but it's because I'm going on a vacation literally today for like
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah.
excited about that. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that burnout's one of those things where it happens suddenly, but it's so hard to remove yourself. And especially like working in a career in data where so many times there are going to be those late nights. There are going to be those like last minute requests that come in. And so like and sometimes a lot of it is around boundary setting. And I think that that's the hardest part with data is that you have to set boundaries. Otherwise, you can continuously be boiling the ocean. I call it like giving a mouse a cookie.
Yes.
Yes.
It's so true.
And so, I think that that's really hard. And I think that I don't know about any of y'all, but I really struggle with setting boundaries and like thinking about now, like what boundaries are non-negotiable for us now versus when they weren't in our early parts of our career. So what are some of those boundaries that all of you set? And how do you kind of reserve some of that deep work when data is naturally reactive?
Yeah.
So something that I think about when it comes to boundary setting is that like this is something that I think is so highly like prone to different like identity intersections and like the place that you are in your career where like
Yeah.
it's obviously like very important for all types of professionals, but especially like women to get together and talk about this because the things that are going to work for us in one stage of our career aren't going to work when we're earlier on. Or like if our kids are young and we're competing against like men with no kids who like love to code on the weekends, there are just things that make this like complicated. And I feel like it's important to acknowledge that there's like structural inequalities that make this really tough to work with. But it doesn't mean like you shouldn't set the boundaries. I just think like, their effectiveness may vary depending on your situation.
Mm-hmm. It's a good call out. Yeah.
Yeah. Boundaries are hard. I think it's easy to say it, but we all know it's really hard to keep it in practice, especially at work. Um, no, and early career much harder than later,
Yeah.
right? When you're more established and confident in who you are. But even then, there's this idea of giving yourself permission to set those boundaries. I don't know if you all have struggled with that. I struggle with giving myself permission to pause and giving myself permission um to like truly say like reorganize or say no to certain things in a way that refreshes me to like be able to hit the ground running. And that's because I've always operated on go, 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 go. There's always something, right? Like you're trying
Right.
to answer, you're trying to keep up. It's hard when you're also customer facing.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're a snowflake and you're
Yes.
and you are, but you want to solve, you want to help them, right? But then what I've been learning is that if I give myself permission first, I can be more proactive at setting those boundaries instead of waiting until I feel like I'm going to pop. What I learned though is being proactive is such a hard muscle to exercise. It's like, and for me, proactive means like, all right, thinking of my whole month and knowing that I need recharge and maybe choosing an afternoon or a day. It doesn't have to make any sense where I already asked for the time off because then I can protect it versus the fluctuating needs every week, right? We're in a space where you're right. It's like how are you proactive in setting those boundaries? And the first step for me is like I operate on recharge. I'm like I think a recharge will work for me because I'm so always focused on like I need to solve this no matter how it fits. The hard boundaries are I have to pick up my kids. And
Yeah.
in a way, it has helped me become better at like setting those boundaries because I don't have a choice, right? My husband and I alternate, like we have to like tag, you do this one, you do that, but it's like this constant calendar organizing,
Oh my
but it
God.
forces me to like be proactive for the fam. But
Yeah.
for me, for the recharge part, as someone to stay fresh, I have to really, really think about it and give myself permission to do so. I've been practicing for the past 2 years. Not easy, but it's like sometimes it works. Some seasons, like a 6 month window, will work really great, and then I have like 3 months where everything falls apart. And then I remember, like you said, Rick, you're like, oh, I'm feeling it. Let me do it again. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tough one. I don't have the answer.
I mean, I feel like what you kind of said there was so true. It's like you have to give yourself permission. And I feel like I've seen something that it was a quote that was like, boundaries aren't me saying like, don't do this, but it is saying like, this is how I need to work in order to also help you.
Yeah.
And what I'm also hearing, Jerrie, is have kids so that way you automatically.
Yeah.
Exhausted, but then also they hold you accountable to carving
Yeah.
out that
Totally.
Paige,
Yeah.
I like would really love for you to dive into this because we've talked a lot about sending boundaries together as some folks who might be new listeners. Paige is actually one of my direct reporters.
Yeah. Awesome. And it is wonderful to be able to talk so much about boundaries with one's manager. It's so good. It's so good. One of the things I was thinking as we were talking about this is I think along with permission to set boundaries, for me, something that has been helpful is recognizing that I also have to be okay with the with the result of doing that. So if I say like, hey, today I had an appointment to take my cat to the vet, routine visit, he's fine, but I had to go take him to the vet. And so I was like offline for a bit, and that was like a boundary. Like, I need to pay attention to my cat and what he needs right now. And I'm just like, I'm not going to be necessarily checking Slack a lot while I'm at the vet with my cat. But that meant I missed being part of a conversation where like some decisions were being made. I came back, at the end of that trip, and I'm like, oh, I didn't get looped in there. I didn't get to like weigh in. And there was a moment of like frustration and FOMO. And I was like, you know what? No, this is something I have to do as part of setting boundaries, is accepting that means I will like not be able to be in all the conversations. And that's okay, because I'm doing something that at the time was more important for me personally and for the family. Yeah. And then the other thing, like for boundaries, is it's easier for me at the beginning of a day, because as the day goes on, we know things come and like just like unexpected things pop up. So my boundaries really are around how I start the day. Like every day I meditate for 12 minutes. I have this one particular meditation thing I do. It's 12 minutes long. Nothing gets in the way of that. And for the past like 50 days or so, I've also been doing like walking on the treadmill in our basement for 30 minutes every day. And it's just like, these things are non-negotiable now. And I don't even think about work until I have done those two things, because they help calm my nervous system and get some endorphins going. And then it's so much easier when I do start the day. If everything's on fire, I'm like, I got this though, because I did the things. So yeah, exactly. Boundaries they are really tough though. There's a lot of there's a lot of challenges around that, but so much of it is around when I set them and I follow them for myself. It means I can do a better job at the job and supporting other people, like, and setting theirs. And being a good example is really, really valuable for other people on the team.
I feel like that's so insightful about accepting the consequences that may come, which sounds like negative, but not always.
Mm-hmm.
That it it makes me think about like managing household chores with a partner or a spouse, that if you're not doing the chore, you don't get to complain about how it gets done. That's what I have to tell myself constantly anyways. And I feel like it's just very appropriate, like letting go of like, I don't know if y'all share this personality trait at all, but like being a person and a Capricorn, love to get things done, love to check things off my list in a particular way. And so I appreciate like the reminder of like, when you set your boundaries, you kind of let go of some of the knock-on effects that may not necessarily be negative, but are going to happen and you don't have control over.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like one of the things, especially early in our careers, I always struggled with boundaries. Like I remember my first 6 months working at Fishtown, I did not go out. I didn't really do anything on the weekends because I was just so worried that I was going to get fired. I was like, they're going to realize I'm a fraud. But
yep,
I think that it's so much more of like getting out of your own head. And it's like the thing that I always like harken back to is my managers. I think that my managers have been so great at teaching me like it's okay to say no. I think that there are certain things that I do now where I try to like think about, okay, this is my boundary that I want to set. What would be the consequences of me setting this boundary? And usually for me, it's like I will go to a stakeholder and, if they are asking for this really big last minute thing, I will have to then think about like my team's boundaries and how my team is doing, and say that like, listen, we're working on all these other things. If you're asking us to do this, like, how does this fall in with the other pieces? And is it that it is on me as a manager that I set my team up for this type of like reactive work? Or is it that like this is arguably unreasonable ask? And how do you actually meet in the middle? Because they also have their own boundaries that they need to be setting, whether it is work related or whether it's like life related. I think we can think of those similarly, but also in a way like a little bit separately. And I have a sticky note on my desktop that I've had since my my leave, which is like, does this need to be done by me? Does this need to be done right now? And can I put this off next week so I could focus on these other priorities? And
I
so
love
I
those.
always like have these like little reminders of like, hey, Erica, remember this? Remember this feeling? Because one of the things that my therapist had said is that like people tend to get a little piggish when you give too much because they will benefit from it. And so they will never say, don't do that.
Yeah. Yep.
And yeah, I feel like the setting boundaries is also like, I always think of it as, you know, this is my life in the long run. Like work is a marathon and not a sprint. But it's also like work isn't the entire marathon.
Right. Oh, I love that. Yes.
True. I think one of the hardest pieces though, when I'm thinking of like early years, is we're in an industry that moves so fast.
Right.
And so you're always trying to keep up and learn new tools, new approaches, new languages, new ways of thinking about. And I remember when I had a lot more time, I found myself like working way into the night because I want to tinker on something and there's no other windows of time to do it. And I would do that. And I think there's a time and place for that, but you
Sure.
can't do it for for extended periods of time. That's when it catches you by surprise, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
because you're reactive at work and then you're like, I need to keep up. And then you're like, I'm trying to prove myself. And then you're like learning how to be a professional in a space that's opinionated and all of this. And I found that, so for me, on top of everything, there's also like health stuff that I manage. So for me, it's always the body just shutting down. That would also be like, especially in the early years where it was just like full shutdown. And I'm like, oh, I pushed it too hard. And I remember talking to some mentees where you're like, yes, do that. Like go after the professional development, but there's always a but, which is like ground it, like, find a way to contain it so that so you have some control because it does sneak up on you. And it's
Yeah.
just like year 2 or 3 or wherever you're, all of a sudden you find yourself just burnt out because you're just like, I'm trying to keep up with everything and I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And I think about that a lot because then you slow down and you feel like you're not doing enough.
Right.
It's weird.
Yep.
It's this weird dynamic of like you were doing too much for a long time and then you slow down because you need to slow down. And then you're like, I'm not doing enough. And it's just like, this is when I think about advocating for ourselves in the workplace for real time during the working hours for professional
Right.
development. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
investing in yourself, like having those conversations upfront with your manager that respects and wants to protect some time for you in the day, in the week, and how you define work helps a lot. That's a boundary. That's like a reality check of like, how do you contain it also in a way where it's valued by your manager, so it's seen, but also it helps you not overdo it because you're trying to do what some others are doing, which is like in their spare time, they're
Yeah.
always working on this stuff, which
Yeah.
could work for
Yeah.
some folks, but it's not for everybody.
No.
Yeah.
Gary, you
I
said
like your thoughts.
something there. Sorry.
No,
You
it's
said
okay.
something
Go
in
ahead.
there that I just feel like I really want to call out where it's like, you do want to have professional development, but it's also like, how much are you willing to stretch for that? And like, what are we doing that for? And I think that so often I see a lot of folks feel like they have to try to aim for that next promotion, try to always like work above their level. And I think in some regards, like it makes a lot of sense in your early career, but I've also like have talked to some ICs where they're like, I'm fucking chilling. Like I don't want to have to grow. I'm like doing work that I really like doing and I don't want to stretch. And I think that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to be in the right culture, right? where
Right.
it's like where you're not made to feel guilty for being happy where you're at.
Yeah.
Some of us,
Yeah.
it's true, some of us are actually pretty, like you said, Rick, happy. And you're like, want to grow, but there's something in our work culture and a lot of orgs where there's this idea of like, if you're not doing above and beyond,
Right.
their eyes on you. Like, do you really love what
Yeah.
you do?
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you really want to be the best version of yourself? And you're like, do I? I do,
Yeah.
but I'm like, you start questioning too. You're like,
Am I playing myself?
Good version now. How about if I just say pretty good? How about pretty good?
you sit there, you're like, I was happy, but now I'm like, ooh. And then they start telling you, hey, so and so built this entire new package for our team in their spare time. And this is what we should all be striving to be team players. And you're like, that kind of language, right? Gets to everybody. Even when
It
you're
does.
telling yourself you're doing good work, you are meeting expectations, it starts feeling like meeting expectations is not enough. And I personally have struggled with this in a lot of companies that I've been at, where it's just like the just being feels like you put yourself in the danger zone.
Yeah.
The unspoken part where you're just like, can we just say, hey, who are you doing it for? Is a real question. It's like,
Yeah.
you have to, or can you just be and enjoy what you're doing?
Oh boy, yeah.
I feel like there are obviously like workplaces where that type of I'm fine, I'm just chilling is like not accepted. And sometimes the answer is to GTFO. And and other times I think like managers can be like trained in this respect, which is maybe the silly way to say it, and the corporate way to say it is like managing up can work in these situations. I had my boss at my last job at my performance review. He said, this is something I wish I would have like had a better conversation with him, because like I had kind of taken things a little bit easier that year and like had not taken on like super challenging projects. Like the things I was doing were just like, I knew that I could be doing better, but at the time I was like a caregiver to my mom who had essentially Alzheimer's, and that is like incredibly like labor intensive work. And so I was like, I don't really have the energy for work, nor do I really care. And I'm just gonna get done what I can get done. And like this manager was otherwise like so receptive to feedback that I wish I had told him like in my performance review when he said like, I can tell that like you have not been appropriately challenged this year. Like he knew that the year was a little easy for me. And if that hadn't been the performance review where I handed in my resignation to come to DVT Labs, I would have wanted to like have that conversation with him and say like, yeah, no, I didn't challenge myself this year at work on purpose. Like it was, this wasn't the year for it. Like maybe next year's the year, but this was not the year for it.
I feel like there's a lot to be said about like the role in which you want work to be playing in your life. And it's it like taking up more space than it should be in your role. And I think that like if you're in a working environment where it is asking for more than you are willing to give, then it's important to like rethink, is this the right company for you? And I also just think that like when I used to be the head of data, I like straight up told Tristan, I was like, I do not want to be a CDO, do not want to be a VP. After we get this started, hire someone else. This is not the thing. But then I continuously felt this pressure of like, no, but you should be director. Like, oh no, you should really strive to be the leader. And it just took so much from me, where I was like, had to remind myself like 3 years into the role that I was like, this isn't what I wanted. Why am I doing this? Why am I sacrificing so much of my life for this? And it was like the realization that you can also step back. Like you can change, like you have the agency to not do that anymore. And that doesn't mean like anything less of you. And I think that's also why it's so important to talk to other people who are in the same industry as you to get that other perspective of what it's like in other places.
Oh, so much. I remember there was a period where I was getting to, like, I don't know, go to different panels or talk to a lot of women in leadership, like really high levels in their companies. And I would always ask, how do you handle work-life balance? And they were always like, what work-life balance? There isn't anything. When you get to this level, there isn't any.
Woof.
And I remember after asking that of like 5 or 6 women in less than a year, and I was thinking, then maybe I don't want to actually, like, this whole time I've been like, I'm going to go as hard as I possibly can. And after that year, I was like, I might rethink what I actually want to get to here. Because that didn't sound attractive to me at that point. Then it was like, well, what would I be doing this? And honestly, honestly, a lot of it is like, this is certainly very candid, but a lot of the success I wanted to have in my career was really to prove to my parents that I wasn't a screw up. I had a really complicated childhood, and I feel like I was always trying to prove like I'm actually successful in life. I'm doing a good job. You don't have to like always be worried about me or whatnot. And realizing that when I realized that, I was like, maybe I can let go of that now, because it doesn't really matter anymore what they think. What matters is what I think. And when I'm actually really proud of where I've gotten to. I'm really proud of the work I do. And maybe that's actually enough. Yeah.
That's huge though. Like I think we're also conditioned, right, to go after certain things. And it is really hard to get to that place of acceptance. So last year in the Women in Data panel at Coalesce, someone asked a question, the balance question. How do you manage being a mom? And I was very pregnant at Coalesce last year, like being a mom, trying to do the best there and work and trying to keep up. And I said, you don't. I really was feeling that time. It's true. It's like, I'm an overachiever and I've had to accept some seasons of being mediocre. It sounds good. But it's just like, that's the boundary. That's the reality of like, there's nothing wrong with just being okay. Like, you're doing your job. You still here. You don't have to be all the way up there every single time, and I have had to embrace that. And that doesn't mean it's thick. It's like you remind yourself over and over again. It's a season, right? Because you're right. There's some elements of like, what am I chasing the title for? Is it because I was told that a better title means I looked upon a certain way, or like I've proven to the world that I made it? And I struggled with that. And I was like, that's not what I really wanted. I want to be connected to people. I love community. I love this kind of stuff,
Yes.
This is what matters most to me and fills my cup. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm right where I wanted to be. Like, how did that happen? Right? Like, I'm right where I wanted to be. And how do I just embrace that and also be okay with, I didn't sleep, for a month, 2 months, like I'm not sleeping well. And so I'm not always going to be the sharpest one in the room or as quick, but it doesn't mean I don't have it. It just means that this is it. This is where you're at. And I have to do this every single week, y'all. Like, remind myself it's okay.
Yes.
And that I'm not less than.
Yes.
And it's just where it's just, this is it. I know this question was balanced. It's true. This is such a big one for me. Like that whole, like, I am enough. I did great.
Yeah.
Well, and I think like that sort of internal continuous check-in, I think like that kind of is what we mean when we say like the art of balance. It's really practice. Because like, Paige, I completely understand the feeling of like, I have to go for these like signifiers of success and like, what is that for? And like the one that I have to check in about constantly is like my grandparents and my parents are all like long since passed away. And so like, I have no economic safety net in that way.
Yeah.
And so like,
Yeah.
it's something that causes me a lot of anxiety. It's like, wow, like what happens if I like lose my job or my husband loses his job? And like, I'm the breadwinner in our household. And so like, there is a lot of very real economic anxiety that I know like I'm not the only one who feels. And like, my situation is not unique. And so like, I think it's normal to succumb sometimes to like, I'm working too much because I'm driven by that anxiety about my financial situation. Like I can't go back and move home with my parents. There's nowhere to go. And like, but like kind of on a similar vein to what you do, Paige, like what I do is like look at my spreadsheet that I've kept for 10 years of all of my finances, like 15 years actually.
Yes.
And I take a look and I'm like, all right, emergency fund. Okay. I could like be out of work for several months if I needed to, and it would be fine. Like sabbatical fund. Yeah. Coming along, like having something concrete to look at, like not to be too much of a data person about it, but like
no,
having something concrete to look at to be like, no, actually like I'm okay. Like it's actually fine. That like, I'm not getting to where I want to go at the speed that I want to get there. Maybe I don't even need to try that hard because like the numbers don't lie and the numbers are letting me know I'm like taken care of. But it is a practice, and it is like pretty much every week or at least every pay period when I do my budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot to be said about like, yeah, I feel like all of this kind of comes down to really knowing yourself and like cultivating this like relationship with yourself where you know where these anxieties come from. Because I feel you, Faith. Like I really care about like my financial health. I do like my weekly budget check-ins to see how I'm like performing against like my savings. And I think a lot about like the reasons why we always feel like we need to be on and doing these things, because if you've gone through like at least like West like like the education system, it's always graded on like how are you performing? Make sure you get A pluses. And I think it's a lot of like unlearning that and being gentle with yourself. And someone once said to me like their coworker would sign on every day in a meeting and ask, "How are you doing?" And he would always say, "I'm living the dream." And there's a lot to be said there where it's like, yeah, I am living the dream. I like love my job. I like have an income. I have coworkers that genuinely like care about who I am as a person and like respect that if I were to say no, they would understand why. Obviously, like saying no, I would also say comes from like, are you saying no or are you like avoiding like
right? Yeah, for sure.
It's
right.
But I think like what I would love to chat about, we've been talking a lot about balancing within work, but then what about like some of the things outside of work that we all like to do that honestly like rest is work, and the hobbies that you do outside of work that you want to make time for? What are those? And like, how does that kind of affect the way you show up at work?
Yeah.
I love that one.
That's really good. Yeah.
Faith noticed this one because I think I've shared with her, but I absolutely love illustration.
Awesome.
Would love, so my dream one day is to write a graphic novel. And so I surround myself with visuals, like even all around my wall over here. And like I have a ton of art books, and I have like acrylic pens over here, and like a little, I'm always experimenting with mediums. I'm always like tapping into color and energy. And Faith gave me this little book that I'm reading,
Face boy!
I surround myself with these beautiful, like little illustrations with pops of colors and stories. And like, because that recharges me, because I'm a storyteller at heart. And I love the power of visuals. I tell myself, the hardest part right now in season in life and momming and all of that is carving time for that. just these little pockets of time for creativity. And I find that it allows me to think about work very differently too, and even like problems very differently, because I like to think about everything outside the box. Right? And I find every time I have more time for it, the more energized I am for everything. And I am now embracing this idea of play in any moment. So I used to lament, oh, I don't have time to draw or paint or do anything. And now when the kids are like, oh, I want a unicorn, I'm like, take this moment to like, I'm going to sketch in this 10 minutes. This is my moment of like being creative. Or I write little like birthday cards for their friends, or like, things like that, where that's where I insert it. I insert it now in every moment, like how I decorate or what I surround. So I surround myself with all these funky pens and things just because it makes me excited about like that. Yeah. So it's kind of cool.
I love all that so much. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, I respect the
yeah.
I respect the carving out. One of our co-hosts not here today, Grace, has mentioned this on a previous episode that she does a lot of theater, and like that is a way to make time for stuff that isn't work, is like having a rehearsal commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's me with improv comedy. I've currently been like out of it for a couple of months, but getting back in December. And boy, do I feel it when it's not in my life. And when it is, I'm like, all of a sudden, wow, every human is just living an unprecedented experiment in their lives. And like, everything's an opportunity to build, like, my outlook on life is so much better when I'm doing improv. And it's similar with writing, because like I'm a writer as well. And it is something that like, if I don't schedule it on the dang calendar, it doesn't happen. And like adult life, I think, is so like there's so many forces pushing us towards like isolation and not doing things together, like delivery apps and social media and like everything that we can get all the things we supposedly need in our own home. So we really have to try, I think, to like get outside the house and do stuff that isn't work. And so for me, that looks like scheduling writing dates with my friends and being on an improv team.
Oh, cool. I love these. I love getting to know this stuff about y'all. This is really cool. I'm sort of one of those like serial hobbyists. So I'll get like really deep into something, obsessed, and then suddenly something will switch and I'll like never do it again, or it'll be years before I pick it back up again. So, but that works really well with this thing that I started doing. I think it was about a year ago, where we have a local community college, and I have committed to like signing up for one class every term that is like in the kind of creative side. So last fall I was doing a theater and acting class that was really fun. It was like all about just like kind of like acting for people who really don't do it as a career, but like somebody just sort of interested in like, can I learn how to do this? That was fun. And then there was one where I was learning to do like sort of two-dimensional stop motion animation with collage and stuff. That was really, really cool. Yeah. It was like a really amazing medium to think about how to put some of my like thoughts and experiences into. That one was cool. The one that I'm looking for one right now. I might have missed the fall semester side because that will happen sometimes for me. So I'm going to be looking into the winter one, but I want to take a screenwriting class because I started like keeping a journal a couple months ago when I went to Greece to scatter my mom's ashes, and it was like this comedy of errors that was amazing. And I'm like, this would be such a cool movie. So I want to like figure out how to turn that into a screenplay. So it just like kind of depends, but like, and then my latest obsession is I really love this video game called The Long Dark, and it's so immersive. You're like stuck in the Canadian wilderness and you're the only human left, and it's like some crazy thing has happened and you're just like trying to survive and the cold, and you're trying to feed yourself and survive the wolves, and like inventory management, which I love in a game. So it's like, yeah, so immersive. And it just really like completely gets me out of the whole like thinking about work. Cause like you're in like situations that are actually kind of scary, and it's a permadeath game. So if you die, that's it. You have to start over. Anyway, it's just like, that's like good stuff. Yeah, those are mine.
Paige,
Rick, what are yours?
Yeah.
I am also like a serial hobbyist, and I think that it was so nice because I let go of the fact that like I don't need to be the best at this. And so I literally have the shelf of like Rick's hobby shelf where it's like, depending on like my mood, where I'm like, do I want to tinker? Recently I've been getting back into building mechanical keyboards. My partner, he is very much in like the streaming, like YouTube space. And so I've been like talking to some of his friends of like, oh yeah, I'll like build you a mechanical keyboard. I have a spreadsheet of like all the different types of switches you can use and all the different types of keyboards.
Yes.
What types of sounds you like? What's like your actuation force when you write?
Yeah, totally.
I also like doing woodworking, like essentially anything that's like tactical for me because it removes myself away from the screen, but I'm also very much like a writer. I like have to write for my thoughts and like think about things in like a more holistic way that makes me feel like my brain can make sense of things. But that, and like I also love video games. I mean, like I'm dating this streamer. And so like really trying to balance, not just sitting on the couch every day playing video games, but also like what are the other things that I can be doing outside. I think that I'm very fortunate because my partner, he's like this stream of ideas, especially for his streams, because he does a lot of coding for his streams and like different ideas. And so it's like really fun to be working with him on some of those and like doing like weekend hackathons. Fun. Yeah, it's nice. We do like we try to have like a date day a week, but our dates are like very random. Where we have like a Jira backlog of date ideas.
Backlog, that makes me so happy.
Not all of our data nerds coming through in our hobbies. So clear.
I know.
So good.
I loved hearing about all of this. I loved like this idea of, thinking about not just work, but also ourselves and how that's so important in like the balancing of work and like also valuing your own self and like your time and how you want to spend that time, because time is the most valuable resource. And so I wish this episode could be longer, but we're fully at time. And so thank you everyone for sharing your experiences and being vulnerable and honest here. To the audience, thank you for listening. Please share this episode with someone in data or just someone in your life who's figuring out their own version of balance. Please subscribe to The View on Data on YouTube or wherever you choose to listen, and tell us a little bit more about how you find balance in your own life. Tag at DBT Labs and please join the conversation. We would love to learn from you as well.
The View on Data is sponsored by DBT Labs, produced by Katie Chubb, edited by Jeff Fox, and created by Balaji Oyejide. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a 5-star review or share with a friend. Thanks for listening.